Please welcome back Mia Hansen-Løve. Is Isabelle here yet? Okay, she's on her way. She's en route, so she will. So we'll get started, and hopefully Isabelle will be here in a few minutes. So my first question for you is, I think in all your films, even though we wouldn't call them autobiographical necessarily, they have sort of had personal starting points in that they originate with some part of your life. And it seems significant here to note that both your parents are philosophy professors. So.
I guess so. Yes. Yeah, they've been doing that their whole life. My dad, who has Austrian origins, who was born in Vienna, actually also has been a translator. And I think even if I don't show that in the film, the German influence is pretty obvious in the film. But it's not something I choose. I mean, making these films that were all, I wouldn't say autobiographical, but who had all connections with my personal life. It's just the way, it's the only way I can write, basically. I wish I would make films that would have nothing in common with me, or nothing so obvious, but I just don't know how to do it differently, or I should ask somebody to write scripts for me. That would be the best way. But until then, yeah, my film have always been very personal in a very direct way. But it's still the first time, and it's my fifth film, and it's actually the first time that I depicted the world I grew up in that frontal way. I think I wasn't ready before get into that for some reasons, and at some point I felt I had to do it. You know, there are some films that you do because you want to do them, and sometimes you do out of a necessity, and it was rather this the case for that film. Oh, Isabelle is back. Sorry to be late.
Did you finish, Mia? Do you have any?
Oh yeah, I'm done.
Okay. It's not going to be a very long Q&A because unfortunately Isabelle has another Q&A to get to in a few minutes. But let me just ask one more question, and then I'll open it up to the audience. You've both known each other for quite a long time. In fact, you played mother and daughter in a film maybe 15 years ago.
Yes, Mia was my daughter in the Sentimental Destinies, film by Olivier Assayas. And now she's my mother. She directed me, so she's a bit my mother. All actors are a bit the children of their director.
But Mia, even though you talked about your family, your background as sort of the starting point, when you were writing the role, did you have Isabelle in mind? And
yes, I did, and I think it even it helped me writing the script a lot. I think without having her in mind, I would not have even written it, because as I said in the beginning, when I introduced the film, for some reasons, probably bad reasons, but I was kind of scared of the film, maybe because of its connections to my parents, and I needed some, I guess, some energy that would come from the outside, and I think Isabelle brought that to me. I mean, even having her in mind helped me overcome the anxieties that I had and really believe in the film.
All right, we'll take some questions from the audience. If you want to, do we have mic runners? Yes. Okay. So just raise your hands, and the mic runners will come to you. Front row.
I guess you're a cat person, not dog person.
I prefer cats to dogs. Luckily, it was cats, not dogs.
But Mia, you have something interesting to say about the cat.
Oh.
That's a good story.
No, there are too many things to say about the cat. No, I think the big difference between the two cats, the one of Elle and the one of my film, is that in Elle it's a professional cat.
Yes. No, really, amazing. Have you seen a professional cat before? It's quite amazing.
And that's why you see the cat like literally jumping on her. You wouldn't see that in my film, you know? The cat would rather run away. And I think it actually tells a lot about the difference of the two films, you know?
So it sounds like some people here have seen Elle. Isabelle, you made these two films back to back, right? And I'm wondering if there are some, even though they're very different films and you play completely different characters, there's some similarities. It's almost like a kind of mirror image.
Yes, there are similarities, except, apart from the cat, and there are two crazy mothers also in the film. Yeah, but it's interesting. Yeah, two really crazy mothers. But it's interesting that those two women who have some kind of irresponsible mothers in a way, completely, out of reality. And in each case, they gave birth to a much more responsible daughter. I don't know what kind of conclusion you can draw from that, but that's the case anyway. And so that's another similarity. And they're both women who never doesn't want to fall into the predictable pattern of a classical victim, you know, for different reasons, of course. But I mean, it turns out that they want to be, yes, to draw their own path, and not being victim and not being the caricature of the abandoned wife. Or so there are similarities in two completely different stories, because in Mia's film I am a philosophy teacher, and in Verhoeven's film I run a video game company. I mean, it's two different characters, but yes, they have something in common for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yes, right there.
If you would, say a word or two about the Commune and their efforts at producing scholarship. I was sorry to see you take away all her contracts in the course of the film, but the Commune seemed very interesting, but brought us back to the 60s and 70s.
I'm not sure I really understand the question.
Are you talking about the kind of life these young people have in the countryside?
Yeah, I was using the American, I mean, we referred to them in the 60s and 70s as setting up communes.
Okay. Well, I've known quite a lot of people in the past years doing this around me. Some of them were former students of my parents who, for some reasons, felt the need to escape the city and try to live differently. That was back when I was 16, 17. I saw that, and I was witnessing these very lively conversations at home about radicality and how it was possible to, or not, to reinvent that today. And I think it has been even more present now in the actual intellectual climate. You do have that question, these kind of questions a lot, and we've had a movement recently in France. I don't know if some of you've heard about it, but it's called La Nuit debout. There were some strikes a couple of months ago, and you had young people who would stay out at night and invest, like Place de la République, like some big places in Paris, and stay there the all night long and speak about like how can we criticize capitalism, but in a way, like come up with a new vision of the world. I don't know if they really had like the solutions, but it like young people who are kind of reusing the ideals of 68, but trying to make them fresh again, and that's pretty difficult actually. But I think it was interesting for me to try to show that, because it tells something about the intellectual climate today in France.
Did you have a question there?
Yes, it was going to be about the politically, but one of the other things I noticed, Mia, is that this is kind of a coming-of-age film, which you've done before, except with the Isabelle Huppert character. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because
About what?
this being a coming-of-age story.
I think all of my films somehow are coming of age stories. It's about this. It's about characters who try to find out what freedom is for them and who they really are, and at some point have to overcome grief and loneliness. It's not something that I really decide. Again, I think every people who write have their own obsessions, and for me it has been like passing of time, coming of age, things that deal with melancholy, and I think it's not so much a matter of age, or is it a woman or a man. It's just the themes that I've been growing up with and keep pursuing, who are still in my mind without it's out of my control somehow.
Yes, there.
I saw both movies. You can't help but comparing a little bit. So I'm just curious about your choice of music at the end of the film, because Unchained Melody to me is the most sentimental and romantic music. I enjoyed both movies very much. But here you have Isabelle, who is so sexy and gorgeous, walking through the whole movie, and you're ending it with Unchained Melody, whereas I was hoping something more will happen for her after all her sexual positions, and she's laying by the water and she's so gorgeous, and nothing happens in that sense. So I'm just sorry about that.
I'm not sure what the question was exactly, but...
the question is Unchained Melody, the music. You end the movie with such a gorgeous, romantic music.
Yes. And you don't like it?
I love the music. I love the music, and I love you, and I saw so many of your movies. I wanted to see a little more something nice happening to you with a student.
Well, that would be things to come too.
Stay. Okay, right behind, there's another hand. Yep, right there.
Yes. So, just really briefly, could you discuss, because this is for Mia, you said your parents are philosophy professors. Could you discuss your perspective on the kind of spiritual nourishment of philosophy? Because the main character is always turning to philosophy. So could you just talk about that a little bit and its role in the message of the film?
My perspective on,
on philosophy, on the use of philosophy. Is that too, maybe that's too broad?
Well, it's like some challenge to try to answer that quickly. Maybe one thing I could say about it is that I think I was, in my relationship to life and to art, I think I was deeply influenced by the importance that philosophy has had in the life of my parents. And one thing about it is that it was not only about ideas and concepts and quest for truth and wisdom and beauty and everything you can imagine that's connected to philosophy. It was also a matter of how to connect that with the real life. That's why the film is not only about philosophy, it's also about teaching, relationship to youth, to teaching, to transmitting. I think it's a very important aspect in the films. It's not only about people who deal with ideas, it's also people who deal with human beings and everyday life. And so it's always a movement back and forth between this abstract world, the invisible, and the real world. And I think that influenced me a lot in my relationship to art, and I think maybe it's part of the reason why I became a filmmaker and not try to become a writer or something else, because I also needed that connection between the abstract notion and something very real, very concrete. And I think what's extraordinary about making films is that it's constantly about that movement and this going back and forth between material issues like the reality, the money questions, everything, and the invisible. And I do see a deep connection actually between philosophy in that perspective and filmmaking.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. And I love the movie.
Thank you.
I think we're going to have to wrap it up, unfortunately. But Isabelle and Mia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.